Welcome to the most watched real estate market update for Calgary, and it's September. Kids have gone back to school. The market is still hot. Like it really is still a hot market out there. And out of 32 areas, which is 8 zones and 4 different property types, that times that is 32. You have 32 areas, only 2 of them from month over month have actually declined, where everything else has increased. You want to know what they are, along with a lot of other stats? Well, let's get into it right now. First, we want to actually dive into what is happening across the country. I got one thing to share with you, and then we're going to jump into Calgary stats right after that. The 4 provinces that have seen increases since the peak of the last number of years are actually Alberta, New Brunswick, PEI, and Newfoundland. These are the only areas that haven't decreased. Ontario has decreased over 12%. Canada as a whole has gone over 10%. BC is probably around 7%. So you're seeing a lot of these provinces having a lot of decreases, but it's not happening in Alberta, as well as New Brunswick, PEI, and Newfoundland. So there are some areas that are kind of faring a lot better than others. And if you look closer into Alberta, you got 2 major cities here. You've got Calgary and you've got Edmonton. And the thing is, they are not talking the same language right now. As you can see, Edmonton has actually decreased since 2022, and they've had some little upticks here over the recent, but Calgary is playing a different game. Will it always stay this way? I don't know. I really don't know. Edmonton has always followed Calgary about 16 to 24 months in terms of what its market does. So if you were an investor and you're investing in Edmonton, you can tell what's going to happen in Edmonton typically by following what Calgary is doing. Now, I don't know if that's going to continue to be that way moving forward because of all the individuals that are moving to Calgary. Having enough houses for people that are moving here is kind of a problem. And I want to explain a little bit on the back end of how we are in a situation that we are in, where it feels like there's just not enough homes for everyone who is wanting to purchase a home. Right here in in year 2000, all the way to today, the trend line of the number of brand new homes being built is decreasing. That's like 23 years, and the trend is downwards. That's not a good thing if you have population increasing. The year 2000 all the way to 2023, you can see that the trend line is increasing at much greater rate than what the homes are being built. As you can see, we have more people moving here, but we have less homes that are being built. So this got me thinking. I wanted to figure out how many homes are there per individuals that are moving to our province, because that would be a really great barometer, a great way to understand what's happening in the market. And so as you can see in this chart here, the blue lines represent the number of individuals per home being built on a quarterly basis going all the way back to 2000. And the red is the Alberta housing start, so how many homes being started, and the yellow line is the population growth. Now you can see that there, right in this area, all the way back to 2000, there's a lot of individuals per homes, about 2 to 3, and that's probably normal, right? You have 2 to 3 individuals per house being built. So if you got some singles moving here, if you've got families of 5, like it's all gonna work itself out. Back in 2009 and 2010, we saw a real big jump. 9.1 individuals per home being built was what the stat was right around the Q1, Q2 of 2009. And what ended up happening is the population actually dropped over the next year or two. We didn't have as many people moving here. And so that kind of solved the problem. So the number of homes, or number of people per home, I should say, kind of figured itself out. So we have 9.1 individuals for every home that is being built here in Alberta. And right now, this population is through the roof. The growth that we are seeing. This is gonna have to almost go into the negative in order to offset this because of how many people are here. There's a lot of rentals being built. There's a lot of other things being built, But ultimately, for those that want to own a home, right now we are looking at something very, very different than what we've seen, which can change the future of what Calgary is going to look like over the next 5 or 10 years. So with that out of the way, I mean, that's a crazy statistic to understand and to see, because 9.1 individuals for every home being built, that's not including any resale properties, that's not including anything like that, that's just a new stat. So it gives us a sense of why there's such a huge demand and low supply in our market. And ultimately, I'm really hoping that builders will be able to start building homes quicker, but there's a lot of other things that are in play. There's government, there's municipalities, there's labor shortages, there's things that are happening in our market that are just not allowing the housing to keep up with the demand. And there's also the fear from a builder standpoint of, if they're gonna build a lot of properties and they're going to put out a lot of cash and sell a lot of these homes, are there going to be people in the future? And that's fair. As a business owner, you want to make sure you're making decisions so that you can stay afloat and grow in the future and not overextend yourself, which is probably a good lesson for us all as we enter the next couple of years when things might feel a little bit tighter. And speaking of tighter is our inventory. The months of inventory, as you can see right down in the bottom here, have actually dropped from last month to this month. So from July to August. And what that means is we are further in a seller's market than we were in July. Now, typically when you get into August is a transition month, and so is September in a normal market cycle, where more people we found over the last 20 years of 19 years of doing real estate is more people go on holidays in August, and then they get back into the groove of whatever that is for them with school, kids, family, work, whatever that is. And then kind of mid-September happens and the market kind of gets going again. And that has been a typical trend. But this August, it set records. There were more sales in certain properties, types, and areas than we have ever seen in Calgary. And when we look back over the last year, we actually started out at $532,000 for the benchmark price for the city. Currently, we've now crossed over the 570,000 mark to 570,700, I think it is. So I rounded up to 571 on the chart. But you can see there has been strong growth. At the same time, our months of inventory have been decreasing throughout the whole year. And where we are seeing some of the sales increasing, the number of transactions, it's not necessarily in the detached properties. It's not necessarily in the townhomes or rows. It's actually in your apartments. That increase that you can see for apartments is way larger than what we've seen in other property types in the city. So when we add all of these sales up together, we are still at a high compared to the last 10 years in number of transactions. And actually, if you look at that, you can actually see a trend. You can see that we actually went up from July to August, where most of the other years all went down. And that was the trend that I was talking about, where August can typically be slower. So what does that mean going into the fall? What is that gonna look like? Where are we gonna go? We kind of can tell, because if we have, again, a lot of demand and a lower amount of supply, and there's more people willing to sell their home and make a move, and there's more builders being able to build, which I kind of get mixed messages in the media, because you end up hearing different numbers, like the number of starts are up, the number of starts are down. So it's hard to understand exactly what's happening, but ultimately it means that we are going to have strong number of sales tied, hopefully, with a strong number of listings coming to our market. And again, we are sitting at the high end of the number of homes that are coming to the market. It's not like there's just not a lot coming on the market. There still is. Well, it's still high compared to the last 10 years. But where we end up sitting at the end of the day is a low total inventory, where a lot of stuff goes on and a lot of stuff goes off the market. So I want to quickly remind you, if you've made it this far, you might want to download the guide that we have, because I've got way more Calgary stats in there, as well as all of these areas, some commentary, stats, all of that. It's in the description, so go down there, download that. If you have any questions, just reach out, but we're going to continue on with the video here. And let's talk about Calgary itself. So as you can see, we still are on an upward trend for our benchmark pricing. And like I said, the benchmark price is nearing $571,000 for the city. Now, I remember saying earlier this year that we could potentially hit this $600,000 mark this year if things continue the same way they are. There is a pretty decent chance that we could end up seeing a $600,000 benchmark price in Calgary this year. I think it could happen. And at the rate that things are going, there's a chance we might hit it next spring, but there's a chance that we might see this green line kind of work its way up at some point through and past the $600,000 benchmark price for the city. And you can see too, down on the bottom, the blue is the number of inventory and the red is your number of sales. So if you look at the number of sales to the inventory, there is more of a gap there, but not in all property types. And that's what I want to share with you. Now, what's also interesting is you can also see, if you look back to, let's look at this color here. Actually, let's look at all the colors. The main price area that we were in 2020 was between 200 to 500,000. And then you look at the dark green areas and the number of sales in August were kind of between your 300 to 600,000. And then if you look at the bright green, it's probably very similar in terms of those same areas. So you're 300 to 600,000. But when we look at August this year, you can clearly see that there is a big difference between 400 and a million. There are a lot more homes that are selling between 500 and 600 and 700 and a million than we have seen in a long time. Now, I also want to note that between the 200 to 300,000, that is also a large jump compared to last year. And you know what that is? I'll show you, but not yet. So if we only look at detached homes, you can see that that gap is there. There's a little bit of inventory sitting on the market compared to the number of sales, which is a good thing. We need some homes to kind of sit, so it balances things out, makes things a little bit better, so it's not, you have to buy this house in 30 seconds or it's gone. But because of the supply and demand, this is still pushing up our prices in Calgary. Now again, if we look at that same chart, the blue lines over here, between 500 to a million is a lot of properties compared to years past. Where if you go 2 years back, that number there between 4 to 500 in 2021, that was a majority of what things were selling for detached homes. Now, if you look at semi-detached, you have to remember this is like kind of duplexes, like older duplexes, but also new infills because they're attached. That's why they're in there. But you can also see there's a little bit of inventory sitting there. Prices are still trending up. And you can see a large increase between the 5 to 600,000, but also between 7 to a million. And this, the 7 to a million one is going to be a lot of those attached infills, the newer products that are, obviously around the 7 to a million price range. There's more of those that have sold compared to years past in August. The one thing to note is 300 to 400 range 2 years ago is not the same, but you can see the difference in the 400 to 500 range. Again, prices are moving up year over year, and you can see this shift happening in these different price ranges depending on the different property type. Now, the increase in townhome prices is a lot steeper than the semi-detached and the detached like we just looked at. And a lot of that has to do with the red overlapping the blue. Now, all that is saying is there's more sales than the inventory sitting, meaning there's a lot of homes selling. There's a lot of townhouses selling. If you own a townhouse, the values have jumped up more in this property type over the last 2 years than any other property type when you look at it. And so it's because the people who are buying, who wanted starter homes, who were hoping to buy in a certain price range, can't get that starter home, so now they're adjusting down to a townhome. And here you can see that is a massive jump between 4 to 500,000, even just compared to last year. That is a huge jump. And you can see from the years before that 2021, 200 to 300, a lot of townhouses in that price range. In 2022, a lot of townhouses in the 300 to 400 range. And now in 23, you've got a lot of townhomes selling in the $400,000 to $500,000 range. And even just this jump here too, right here, 500 to 600, that is a large jump, a large number of properties selling over 500,000 for townhomes. And now we move to apartments. Condo apartments have seen probably their largest number of sales in a single month ever in August of 2023. As you can see, the pricing has increased, and right here it's really hard to tell, but if I zoom in on this, you can see how there's a blue line that has dropped significantly compared to last month. So all that is saying is that we have had inventory drop because there's been a lot of sales that have happened last month, and it shows in the price ranges. Clearly, so many condos between 200 to 300 and 300 to 400 have sold, and it's just a total different August than what we have seen in years past. And now I want to tell you, at the very beginning of the video, I said there was 2 areas that have actually decreased in value compared to all the other 32 areas. So here's a list, 32 areas, 4 different property types, 8 different zones in each one, and there's only 2 that actually decreased where everything else went up. And those are apartments in city center and detached homes in South Calgary. But Jared, you were saying that there's a lot of condos that are selling in our market, when reality is, as you just said, city center actually benchmark price change went down. So if there's a lot of selling, probably prices are going up. But why is that the case? Well, it's because city center for condo apartments, there is enough supply for the demand that is out there. And that's where it's happened. And in fact, it went down 0.27%. I mean, it's not a lot, pretty much stayed the same. But when everything else is going up, sometimes 1% or more, that is a big difference. And the second one is the detached properties down in South. Detached properties in the South quadrant, there's a lot of new builds, there's a lot of homes there available, and really, it just ebbs and flows. I mean, it only went down 0.2%, but that is probably the same thing as the inner city condos in terms of they've got enough supply for the demand that was needed for this past month, where every other quadrant, every other zone, there wasn't, and properties were being bought up. And a lot of them are being bought up in the northeast and the east quadrants and zones because of their price point. So if you like this information, you gotta go get the market update, because we have a lot of more information, including all of this towns around Calgary. And so go check out the download in the description, download it. And if you like that, you can also head over to this video here too, where we got a lot more stats for you and a lot more information about the Calgary real estate market.